It's 1 o'clock on a Wednesday. Let's do today's topic, which is the visioning orbit. How to create a compelling word picture of your 3-year vision on a single page. So that is the title of today's webinar. What I thought we'd do is basically, first of all, just sort of say, well, what we're trying to do today, what are you going to get out of today? Because it's really important. Today's a really practical, hands-on session. 3 things you're going to get from today. First of all, why you need a vision. Why you need a vision. Second thing is, well, what is a vision? And third thing is how to create your draft vision. So for a proportion of today's session, about 20 minutes, what I wanted to do so you get the most out of today's session is to allow you the, I guess, luxury to actually work on your vision. Let's see if we can create a draft vision for you guys in today's session. I think that'll be a really great output. You know, talk is cheap, but ultimately what you want to do is apply this stuff. And I get that. So I built that time in for you. Hopefully a number of you should have received a template of the circular diagram template that we are going to be using. So if you've not received that, just drop your email in the chat and Lisa will send that on to you. If you have got that, maybe you've printed it out, maybe you got it on screen, you need to be able to write into that. So maybe print it out or things like that. If you've not got it, we can always do a table, but it's better if you've got the actual orbit template. Then you'll get the real most out of today's session. Okay, let's make a start. Why we need a vision. Why we need a vision. Start with the why. So I suppose I get asked this a lot. What is a vision? Why do we need one, etc. And I suppose I'll give you a few examples of where I think it's needed. I often get asked to go into businesses and the MD and the leader or whoever will say something like, well, you know, this is our situation and, you know, what do you think our high growth strategy should be? And unfortunately, I've not got any magic fairy dust to sprinkle on strategies or businesses. And the honest answer is I don't know. It's your strategy. And they say, yeah, but what sort of growth should we go for? Again, it's your strategy. Some people, when I talk to about a growth business, they want to grow by £1 million turnover. Some people, £5 million turnover over 3 years. Some people, £10 million. Some people, 3 years and they want to exit and they want a profitability of this so they can get that, so they can exit the business. So it's a really personal thing, what your growth strategy should be. But usually the way I say it is, well, if you really have not got a clue as to what your strategy is over the next few years, then, you know, do this session, do this orbit visioning session. It's a really good one to have. It's a little bit like Alice in Wonderland. And Alice is stood at the crossroads. And she doesn't know where to go, left or right or forward or backwards. She looks up into the tree and a Cheshire cat appears as it does. And she says to the Cheshire cat, which way should I turn? Should I go left, right, forwards, backwards, this crossroads? And the Cheshire cat says, well, that depends a great deal, my dear, on where you want to get to. And Alice thinks for a while and says, well, I don't know where I want to get to. And the Cheshire cat beams and says, well, it doesn't matter which way you go then. And Alice says, but I want to get somewhere. And the cat says, oh, you'll get somewhere. Just keep walking. Now, the analogy of that is really about, for me, is a case of first step in trying to write a strategy, you know, basic fundamentals of writing a strategy. Where are we now? Where do we want to get to? How are we going to get there? 3 easy questions of a strategy, a growth strategy. So you kind of should know where you are now in terms of your numbers, profitability, customers, that sort of stuff. Where you want to get to, though, and this is a really good tool for looking at that. If you can find out where you are now and where you want to get to, then it's really just about working back. Sometimes I get asked to do this session in businesses where, to be honest, the managing director or the leader is in the middle of a crisis. Sometimes, if I'm honest, in tears, mostly full of anxiety. you know, we're all working really, really hard at the moment, and you know, fair play to you guys for doing it. And I'm the same. It's like every hours, etc. But sometimes, you know, when you get out of bed in the morning, what you really want is a vision. This is why I'm getting out of bed. This is why I'm going to jump on that hamster wheel again, etc. I'm going to go for it. We want a vision of what the future looks like, hopefully better than one today. But sometimes it's difficult for people to get out of that way of thinking. It's just on the hamster wheel day after day after day. It's difficult for them to actually think about, well, what is a better way for me to run and run a growth business? What would it look like? This technique is a great way for you to do that. Third time sometimes is, sometimes businesses, I think, struggle to grow because they can't almost articulate or see what their business might look like if it did grow. Here's an interesting statistic. Look at this. 75% of UK businesses never get beyond 250k turnover. 75%. Why is that? Only 15% ever grow over 500k. That's all SMEs in the UK. And I've got a theory on this, which is actually the fact that the reason why that is because a lot of MDs and leaders can't actually envisage what their business might look like over 250k. They say, well, crikey, I'd need sort of maybe another 25, 30 customers, and I'd need a new office. I need this. And I can't even imagine what that might look like at that size. So we need a tool to sometimes help us. Sure, we may have the ambition to grow, but what does it look like? What does that growth look like as my business? And then the final one is for all you leaders out there. We're all leaders, aren't we? So what is the one thing that leaders need most? The one thing that leaders need most is, small drum roll, followers. Leaders need followers. Leaders need people. The reason why people follow leaders is because they put their hand up voluntarily and say, yeah, I'm going to follow that chap or that lady. They know where they're going. They've got a vision. They've got an idea. You know, leadership is about guiding people on a journey. Manus, management, root derivative, manus, is about handling things. Leadership is guiding people on a journey, taking them somewhere. So if I'm going to follow you, if you were my leader, where are you taking me? What's your vision? Where are we going on this journey? Is it worth it? Crikey, I'm hard at work every hour God sends, blah, blah, blah. And you want me to follow you? Why would I? So the reason why you would is because you can articulate where we're going, what that destination is going to be like, what my role is in it, why particularly you need my skills, knowledge, expertise, and what's in it for me. So think about it. Why would anybody want to follow you if you haven't got a vision? If you haven't got a vision as a leader, then to me, you're just a manager and maybe even just almost maybe even an administrator. And we need managers and administrators, but we also really do need strong leadership. And if you haven't got a vision, then I would challenge you and say, how are you leading? So lots of reasons there as to why we need a vision. The good thing today is that if you're thinking, crikey, I'm not sure I've got a vision, well, we're going to have a draft one pretty quickly. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we should be okay. So that was why we need a vision. But what is a vision? What is a vision? What is a visioning orbit? So what I want you to think about is this children's puzzle. Which rod catches the fish? So if you have the same sort of handicap that I've got, which is a marketing and strategy degree, you start off with A and you go, oh, no, it's not that one. B, no. C, no. D, oh yeah, we got D. Fantastic. But the engineers and the quality people who are on this call will be crying out to me, Steve, start the fish and work backwards. That's the fastest, most efficient way to do this puzzle. Of course it is. The marketing people like me are still saying, well, yes, but it's a beautiful color of blue, isn't it, though? That teal, lovely. Start the fish and work backwards. That's how the most efficient way of doing this puzzle. So that's the same with your vision. Sure, we know where we are now, this year's figures, EBITDA, profit, turnover, number of customers, or we know all that, but we need to think about where we want to get to. What does success look like? And then we chunk that back from year 3 to year 2 to year 1. So in essence, we've got a situation here of, as long as we know where we are now, and as long as we know where we want to get to in 3 years, then years 2 and years 1 become really just a chunking exercise of where we want to put those numbers. So start the fish and work backwards. I love this quote from Steve Jobs. If you're working on something exciting that you really care about, you don't have to be pushed. The vision pulls you. And that's the same, certainly the same for me, probably the same for you as well, I imagine, is that if you're doing something that you're passionate about, that you can see, that gets excited about, then it's not like work sometimes. It's actually just getting on that and seeing that vision and going for it. And rather, instead of like pushing a string of beads, this is like pulling a string of beads. The vision pulls you in, and that's how you do it. So really important, not only in terms of having a sort of a vision for our business sort of performance, our business strategy, but it's important for you. It's important for you as a leader, and it's important for your employees. So we know where we're going from. This is you leading. So what on earth could a vision orbit look like? Well, let me introduce you to the Vision Orbit tool. So you can see it looks a little bit like a dartboard. What you can see there is we got the current year. This one's 1 year out of date. So current year, and then we've got 2021, 22, 2022, 23, and 23, 24 in the outer ring. So you can see here, it's basically a number of concentric circles. And any information that's in the circle, let's say in the current year, in those segments, that refers to information or data or numbers that refer to the current year. So if I was to ask how many customers on the outside, that will tell us in the current year how many we've got. And the same for the outer years as well. So what I can do in these with this sort of dartboard is then actually, just to make it a little bit more easy to understand, is break it into some quadrants. So I've got some financial information in my top left. Top right, I've got some customer information. Bottom right, I've got some operation information. And bottom left, I've got some people information. So what I can do here, and this is an example of one where I was working with an entrepreneur on, is basically showed her this dartboard, this visioning orbit, and said, okay, so let's create the vision. Where do you want to be in 3 years' time? And the usual sort of silence of, well, I don't really know. So I said, well, okay, if you were going to tell me about your business in 3 years' time, how would you describe it? So she said, well, I don't know, it's really difficult, isn't it? So I said, yeah, but try. What metric or what measure would you start off with if you're going to describe your business in 3 years' time? So she said, I don't know, turnover. So I said, yeah, brilliant. So let's write turnover in the financials bit. It's a good place to start, the obvious place to start. So I said to this entrepreneur, what's your turnover now? She said, 10K, because it was only a startup business. Okay. So I said, what do you want to be in 3 years' time? So she said, well, I don't know. I want it to grow. I want to get to where I get towards sort of financial independence. I want this sort of growth. So after a little short conversation, I said, well, what turnover do you think that might mean for you, for success for you? And so she said, well, I don't know, 2 million. So I said, brilliant. Let's just write 2 million down for now. We can always change it. So I said, if it's 10K now, which it is, you can see in the inner circle there, and in 3 years' time, it's 2 million your turnover. What does it need to get to maybe in year 2? Bearing in mind, we've got to get to 2 million and we're at 10K at the moment. So she said, I don't know. So I said, well, no one's got a crystal ball, but what do you think? Rough number. So she said, oh, 1 million. So we put 1 million in the year 2. And I said, what about next year? So she said, well, I don't know, 200K, something like that. Okay, 200K. So you can see here that we started the turnover. We're going to start with our turnover. What is it now? What do you want it to be in 3 years? And then just chunk it back, just like which rod catches the fish. So we said, okay, so that's great for turnover. What else? So he said, well, profitability is important to me because it's not just about making turnover. So I said, okay, what's your profitability at the moment? She said, well, that's easy. It's nothing. So I said, that's great. Okay, we put that in. I said, on a turnover of 2 million, what would you think would be industry sort of standard for a business like yours turning over 2 million? She said, well, I don't know. Well, maybe I don't know, about 20%, maybe something like that. So I said, okay, so let's go 400K in year 2023, in year 3 years time. And then shall we use that as our guide for the other ones? So 20% on 1 million is 200K, 20% on 40. Okay, so great. So we worked it back that way. Later, we actually decided that we might need some external investment, another financial thing, and that was going to come in next year to fund some of the exciting things we had in place. But we did that one slightly later on in the process. We moved on to customers. And this is always an interesting one that I ask, certainly entrepreneurs, but also fast growth businesses as well, is can we articulate how many customers we'll need to generate the turnover? And let's try and keep it relative, if we can make it relatively simple. So here we said, well, based on an average price, and let's just assume one customer buys one product. That might not be the case in your case, but it was for her. On an average price of £30, if we want to make 10K, how many customers have we got? So she said about 333. Okay. So I said, okay, so if we use the same sort of formula to make a 2 million turnover in 3 years' time, we'll need 66,666. Year 2 to give us 1,033,000. Year 1, 6,000. Simple maths. Then I talked to her a little bit about the blend of customers, because as we try and get that profitability at 400K, you can see here, it might be that we need a new range of products. So here, this was a lingerie and a technology product that was basically to do with some keep fit clothing. And so in essence, it was 100% of the L for lingerie. But in order to get that profitability, that shift was going to have to be more 60% lingerie and 40% technology. So this sort of clothing technology sort of firm would develop that profitability we needed. So at the moment, it's 100% one way. In 3 years, it needed to be 60-40. So I asked her to map out what that blend change might look like. So it went 60-40, 80-20 to 100. We also talked about export markets. And again, looking at that turnover, looking at that profitability, you know, what can we put in there in terms of where we could get volume and money from outside of the UK? So she started to put in there some ideas around what export markets she had in her mind. New product lines. So by year 3, in order to make that profitability and to sell and compete in those overseas markets, we needed much more of a techie diagnostic-y feel to this. So it was a case of actually, again, marking that back from the diagnostics product would come out in the year 3, the mobile app in year 2, and line A and line B in year 1. Number of pieces manufactured, because a manufactured product this. So again, telling the story now around the operations and the improvement. And again, we know that this assumption was one product, one customer. So we were able to map that back in line with the turnover and the profitability. If we were asked, and we probably would be by a VC or a funder or anybody else, how are you going to manufacture all those at such a good profitability? It may be that we might have to go out to China in year 3, but that would mean that we keep our Newport factory in year 2 and year 1. Moving on to people. So people. So how many people have we got at the moment for 10K? Well, it was about 2. Sounded a lot for 10K, but let's think about 2 million turnover with 66,000 pieces being maybe manufactured in China, or how many people would we need then? So she said about 50. Okay. 50 in year 3 becomes 35 in year 2, becomes 15 in year 1. a really important one on people, I find often is key appointments. You know, businesses don't grow by themselves. They grow because, I guess, innovative, experienced maybe, or people who are there to make big decisions make those big decisions. So I think we move from a sort of small business into a more, I guess, siloed business that's got maybe, I guess, specialist experts in finance, HR, marketing, rather than possibly as it is at the moment, just you running around. So if I was looking at this business, I'd want to know not only about where it's growing to and what areas and operations, I'd also want to know what that people plan is, the key appointments that are going to make the big difference, the big leaps. So you can see here that in year 3, she wanted an operations director, finance director in year 2, marketing director year 1. Marketing director is really important because that was going to give them that sort of real uplift in sales. And then finally, some retail partnerships. So you can see there that in year 3, they wanted to look at maybe a partnership with M&S and John Lewis for the sake of argument. So you can see there, all on one page, a draft, 3-year visioning orbit. All on one page, what the business would look like, feel like. All on one page, your view of where you're going to take this business. And that's a really powerful thing. We're seeing this sort of document replacing pages and pages in your business plan, just one, this in appendix or in the main page to say, this is the vision. And we can talk people through it, and you can recruit people on it, and you can get funding on it and things like that. So really powerful, really powerful. That's what we're going to try and do. So I suppose the key question for everybody is does this work? So let's just watch a quick video of some businesses that have used this technique before we start to apply it to our own businesses.
We bake a range of fabulous cakes. We specialise in flapjacks, muffins and cupcakes, and we supply not just all the supermarkets but convenience stores and impulse outlets and caterers all around the UK. So we went through the process at the workshop of creating the orbit.
We used the orbit tool. We started thinking about, well, if where we want to be in 2016 or 2017 is here, where are we going to have to be in the years between now and then?
Specifically getting everyone involved in really fleshing out the big picture and the plan, and then it becomes not just my plan, but it really becomes everyone's plan, and I think that's been a real powerful tool and a real motivating tool as well.
Roaming Roosters sells sustainable food online, and we now have a farm shop, bistro and education centre. As you're forecasting, you're wanting to achieve and you aspire to achieve, but you just don't know how you're going to do it. But this did help us a lot to sort of start from the outside, work back in, work out where you want to get to and how you're going to get there. And it's given us the tools now to get there a lot quicker.
We've managed to create the orbit, the single page plan, tell a story to the bank. They've recognised the credibility of the company, the strengths of the owners, and they very quickly got a commercial mortgage.
We exceeded our forecasts, and quite rapidly really. We hit what we wanted to achieve in 12 months, in 6 months.
We've been here at Newcastle Airport for about 8 years now. We sell men's and women's fashion and travel accessories, all with a slant towards holidaymakers or people travelling. The orbit tool on the wall, we've been looking at that and sort of finalising all the different areas that we need to start working on next.
The orbit tool is actually probably one of the most powerful tools within the whole tool set. The question to the guys is, where do you want to be in 5 years' time? We can then start to take small steps to achieve those goals, and it makes the whole process simpler and feel more achievable because you're in 6-month blocks or 12-month blocks rather than looking out to 5 years, which can feel a little bit overwhelming at some point.
The orbit diagram has been a wonderful tool. That's been really helpful. In fact, that's probably been the most pivotal thing that we've been shown. Yeah, it's just been really good for us.
Okay, so yeah, some people saying some good things there about the visioning orbit tool, and it's a very practical tool. And I guess, like the guy said, it's also a case of, obviously today you guys are going to have a go at it, but maybe, do you involve certainly your senior management team, or do you involve your staff, or do you involve your customers maybe getting input to it? So it's a really powerful tool, and it's a great way to develop your vision. So our third question was, how are we going to create our vision? So that's what we're going to do today. What I'd suggest you do is, if you've got your template for your orbit diagram template, if you can get that out and get a pen in your hand. And for those of you who've not got it, you might want to maybe, what we'll do is maybe, if you haven't got it, what you should have something that looks a little bit like that. If you've not got that, drop a message in the text, and we'll email you one over. If you don't want to do that, what I would do is just draw yourself a table that's got some dates in there that looks something a little bit like this: current year, year 3, year 2, year 1, turnover, and then we can start to put some numbers in. Notice I'm starting with current year, then I'm going third year, etc. So draw yourself a diagram, looks a little bit like that. But for those of you who've got the orbit template, I'll talk you through the exercise from there on in. So let's just assume that we've got that. So first thing what I want to think about is to look at the spoke labels that go around the edge. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with turnover in the financial side of things. So what I want you to do is to think about what your turnover is. So you need to, in the spoke label on the outside of the outer ring, just write turnover. And then in the inner ring, where I've got 10K there, just write in your current turnover for your business in the inner circle, if you like. So what's your current turnover for this year? Or what do you think it'll be for the year end, if you want to do it that way? And once you've done that, then, and again, this is just a draft, but I want you to think about, what does growth mean to you? What would success look like? So in 3 years' time, what turnover do you want to be in that outer ring? What does growth look like for you? So maybe typically growth businesses grow 20% year on year. Some of you may have bigger aspirations than that. Some of you may not. So by now you should have your current turnover in there, and on the outside ring, your turnover in 3 years. Now what I want you to do is chunk it back. So in this case, if it was 2 million in 3 years' time, what does it need to be in 2 years' time? The circle that's just inside that one. So where do you need to be in 2 years to get to, in this case, 2 million? So they said about 1 million. Where do you need to get to? And then the same for year 1. So in this example here, we needed to get to 2 million in 3 years, 1 million in 2 years. What do we need to get to in 1 year? So this time next year, what sort of turnover do you need to be doing? And then you've got numbers in each of the parts of that segment, that piece of cheese. In this case, 2 million in 3 years, 1 million in 2 years, 200K in 1 year, and where you are now. That's a turnover. So at this stage, you might be thinking, well, I haven't got a crystal ball, I don't know. But I think this is your opportunity here to choose. This has got to be, your opportunity as a leader to sort of say, this is the journey we're going on. The size of your vision has got to be bigger than your fear, though. So let's go for a big vision. Let's go for a growth vision. Let's go for it. What you do the next for probably profitability next. So in your second area there, what is your profitability at the moment? And that goes in your current year, in your innermost circle. And then I want you to look at your turnover in year 3. And I want you to think about, what profitability would success look like? Maybe you want to make more profitability than you are now at the moment. But what sort of level of profitability in thousands of pounds or millions, whatever size your business is, or hundreds, do you want your profitability to be in 3 years? And then chunk that back to 2 years. And then chunk that back to 1 year. And does it look like a reasonably good step up from where you are now? That's the profitability. What would success look like for you? Many people on the call are probably looking, even though the economy is not looking great, are probably looking for a more profitable business, is my hallucination. Now, what we want to do now is actually think about what other thing we want to put in the other thing in that other area. So you can see here that there's a number of, you've got a couple of choices here. You don't have to do external investment if that's not your thing. If you don't think you're going to need external investment, you could choose maybe some of these other financial spoke labels, like maybe turnover per employee, or inventory turns, or investment, or percentage turnover by a new product range, or a new division, or new team. That, you know, what percentage of that overall turnover is going to be from that new thing that you're doing, new technology, or a new product, or a new region. And then you can start to tell a story then around how the turnover is going to increase, and the profitability as well. So maybe have a think on that third area. Which one do you want to go for there? What I want you to do now is move across to your customers, the top right, and have a think about what's the best way to tell your story about your customers. So for entrepreneurs that are growing fast, working out the total number of customers in the year is a really good way of thinking about how they're going to do the marketing and how they're going to actually go about customer acquisition. But it may not be for you. So sure, if you wanted to, one of your spoke labels for your customers side could be total number of customers, or it could be breakthroughs that will delight your customers. Maybe you're going to be doing things by year 3 that your response time is going to be down to 1 hour, where it's currently 10 hours at the moment, or maybe it's a quality thing, or maybe it's a cost reduction thing. Maybe what are the breakthroughs you're going to give for customers? So they don't always have to be numbers. It could be words here that we're going to describe year on year. So we set the bar at year 3 and we say, okay, so one of the breakthroughs in year 3 is going to be around maybe quality of this, and maybe year 2 is going to be to do with speed, and maybe year 1 might be to do with range or something like that. Maybe we can tell a story there of what we're going to do with our customers. Sometimes we play the game of, if we had a really your most demanding customer on this call, what would they say in year 3? What do they want from your business? What about levels of service, or digital online version of it, or whatever it might be? What would they ask for by year 3? Chunk that back. Could be about international markets. So maybe we say, okay, well, we're not going to do anything international until year 3. So maybe we just put, France in year 3 as our export market, or something like that. Or maybe it's a key part of your business at the moment. What about telling a story around the blend of customer types? So at the moment, it's not, as an example, if you've got a business that's completely into the aerospace sector, but by year 3 you need to be in the automotive sector, then how does that percentage change from automotive to aerospace? Is there a blend? If you're going to generate growth, where's it going to come from? Is it going to come from new markets, new regions, or are you going to get that from the same market that you're in? Maybe even famous customers you've won, sort of these kingpin customers that I know when our business first started working with Google, it was incredible. It led to working with all sorts of other really exciting businesses. So we put that in our vision that we wanted to work with Google in year 3, and that led to all sorts of other great stuff. But Net Promoter Score, customer satisfaction scores, maybe have a think about those as spoke labels, and And what does that look like in year 3 and in year 2 and year 1? So today we're not going to get a final version. I totally get that, but I just wanted to give you the opportunity to just draft some initial thoughts down. There's only 3 areas per quadrant. And the third quadrant is operations. So this is where you tell the story of, well, if we're going to do these financials, this turnover, this profitability, and we're going to do this with these customers, maybe overseas, maybe doing this, maybe that, what does our operations look like? So, you know, if you're a manufacturing company and you're doing X amount of turnover, then how are you going to do that? You probably can't do it with the kit you've got at the moment. So is it a new factory? If so, what year are you moving into that new factory? Year 1, year 2, year 3? If it's a service-based business, how many sort of billable hours or how many people days delivery do you need from your staff? Show that you've thought about that as a capacity issue. Clearly, the way you're operating, whether you're a manufacturing or service-based company, the way you're operating now is probably not going to be the way you need to operate when you're looking at much higher levels of turnover. We're going to look naive if we say that. So we need to tell a story around the operations. Maybe there's some particular ramp-up challenges that we need to get over. So maybe in year 2 we need some level of automation, like CNC machines or whatever it might be, or maybe there's a new design or a new supplier that needs to come on board. So maybe we have a spoke label outside called new suppliers, and we map out our new suppliers year 3, year 2, year 1. A really hot topic at the moment is emission reduction. So a lot of SMEs, high growth SMEs, are coming under pressure from their big customers saying, listen, if you want to carry on doing business with us, we need to see a good emission reduction action plan from you, because you affect their scope 3 and they affect your scope 3. And so maybe here is about actually a reduction in your emission, your carbon footprint. So what is that going to be in year 3, year 2, year 1? So here we tell the sort of the operations chapter, if you like. And then finally, final 4th quadrant, people. So I said before, you know, what's the people plan here? Is there a growth in number of employees? So in the example I showed you, if you've got an overall turnover that's maybe 3 times, 4 times bigger in your financial segment, top left, how many more employees do you think you're going to need to deliver that year 3 turnover? Is it going to be maybe 10 more or 20 more or maybe a few more if you can outsource it in 3 years' time? Then chunk that back to 2 years' time and 1 year's time, and then look at those gaps. What about for your business? If you are going to grow at the moment, probably one of the constraints you've got in your mind is, this is going to get really busy for me and we just don't have the skills to grow like this. But if we could find the ideal people, the key appointments to add to your management team, who would they be? And not necessarily by name, but what sort of areas, what sort of capacity, what sort of roles would they play? So maybe you might be thinking, well, it's going to be really tough to grow at this rate by year 3. But, you know, if we got a decent business development director in year 2, that would actually really bump up the sales for year 3. That would be that. And maybe we need someone to really, just a better management accountant at the moment, not someone who just does the books. Maybe we need a management accountant, a finance director in at maybe year 3 or something like that. You don't have to have one in each of the areas, but might be something to think about. But what else about people? Diversity issues. What about awards that your team has won? Can you think of any of those? And, you know, by maybe in year 1, it's a local award, maybe year 2, a regional award, and maybe year 3, a national award for best company to work for, or best team, or some industry award. And then maybe even increase in satisfaction, employee satisfaction. Maybe that's something that's important to you. So, you know, in what's your current levels of employee satisfaction at the moment, and what do you want them to be by year 3? And then chunk that back. Year 3, year 2, year 1. So if we do that, we end up, you should now be creating and having something that looks a little bit like this. A little bit, obviously your spoke labels might be different to this. Your numbers will be different to this. But what you're in a position now, very, very quickly, and I totally get it's only a draft at this stage, but what you should have is something that looks a little bit like this, that describes your business and something that you can believe in. I think, I'll be honest with you, doubt kills more high growth dreams than failure will ever do. So hopefully this gives you a degree of confidence. And as they say, sometimes it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. So this is you saying, this is what our business can be. It's not a case of how big a business we are, but look at this vision. This can really drive us forward, really towards success. So that leaves us with this one-page plan. One page that describes what you are. So I guess a couple of quick questions on our draft. First of all, if you've said yes to some of these things, what have you said no to? And what I mean by that is, from a strategy point of view, this is always a question, one of the 2 questions I ask. If you've decided that we are going to do, for the sake of argument, we're going to go and go for regional expansion. So maybe in the regions you're putting, well, at the moment we're just in Wales, but we're going to go to the Northwest and we're going to go to Yorkshire, or we're going to go from this particular market segment to that particular market segment. If you said yes to that, what have you said no to? Maybe you've said no to exporting. Well, maybe you've said no to that product development or that strategic alliance, or what have you said no to? And I think for me, strategy is, yes, it's about saying, where are we now? Where do we want to get to? How are we going to get there? Here's the vision. Absolutely. I believe in that completely. However, strategy is as much about what you're going to say no to as it is about what you're going to say yes to. It might be useful for you to, when you're presenting this orbit diagram, to actually be in a position to say, this is our vision, this is where we're going. And by the way, this is what we've had to say no to. We've had to say no to the fact we're not going for that new product development in that area, or we've had to say no in these next 3 years to exporting, or whatever it might be. Second question, the scaling question. And this one there, I get really excited, is if you turbocharged your growth on that orbit diagram that you've got in front of you right now, if you turbocharged it by 10 times, what's the first thing that quickly becomes scarce? What do you start to run out of? And this is an important question because, so scaling and growth, they're different things to me. The growth strategy, you grow the business, but you also get all the costs as well. And also the hassle that you get that takes you away from your family, your friends, you don't have a life, etc. Scaling is you scale up, but the costs don't rise. They don't rise at the same proportionate rate. So you're actually making a disproportionately more profit and you can grow the business faster. But the thing to look at with the difference between growing and scaling your business is the reason why businesses can't scale is because something becomes scarce. They run out of something. So if you think about, I don't know, a window cleaner, a window cleaner can't grow his business by 10 times overnight. Why not? Well, it's only him. Okay, so the scarcity there is around the person. So if we're going to scale quickly, we need to sort out that, well, maybe we need to include in our vision additional window cleaners in this case. But what about your business? Why can't you grow by 10 times more than what you've just written down turnover? Think about it. Well, maybe obvious. You might say, I just don't have the customers, Steve. Okay. So what we need to build into that plan is the marketing, the customer acquisition. Do you need a marketing business development manager in that plan? Do you need a much slicker way that generates a pipeline of inquiries for you? Get that in the plan in year one, maybe. You might say, well, Steve, you don't understand my industry. We couldn't grow by 10 times because we just had the cash. It costs a lot of money to invest in the stock or the machinery, and I just don't have that cash. So I'm never going to grow by 10 times. Okay. So what I'll tell you this to you is, if you've got a really good solid plan that's well thought through, and these orbit diagrams are often that, then you might be able to get that money. There might be someone who might actually lend you that money, whether it's asset finance to get some machinery, or whether it's debt finance, or whether it's even equity finance, whatever it might be. I was only a few days ago, I was talking to, I was at a sort of event for growth funding, and I was interested by the fact that the small businesses that were there said, well, problem is with these sort of events, Steve, is that there's loads of people like us, ambitious small businesses that want to grow, but there's just not enough funding or funders. And what was interesting was, on that, this is exactly at the same event, one of the funders came over to me and said, well, it's interesting, these sort of events, aren't they, Steve? Says, of course, the problem is the fact that there's loads of us funders here, loads of money sloshing around, never been more money sloshing around, but not enough ambitious businesses that can articulate a growth story. I thought, how interesting, to bang everybody's heads together and go, crikey, So what's stopping you from growing 10 times faster? What becomes scarce? And then build that, bake that into your vision, so that when somebody asks you, well, okay, you can't do this because, you can say, absolutely, it's an absolutely fair point. That's why we put this in the vision, to help us overcome that challenge, to help us to grow. So, benefits of the visioning orbit. So first of all, it forces leaders like you to take the helicopter view on their growth strategy. So sometimes if you're the leader, or you're looking for funding or things like that, often they'll say, what's your growth story? And you need to be able to articulate that with confidence and clarity from a high level. This allows you to do that. It also helps you to go to that next level of detail in terms of describing your growth ambition, to keep you sane, to keep you motivated, but also your people in your business and maybe your customers, potential funders, etc. Everybody can say, oh, I'm going to grow the business by 5 times in 3 years. But everybody behind that is always looking at you going, well, how are you going to do that then? This creates that simple word picture of what successful growth looks like for them. The other thing that this dartboard, visioning orbit, whatever you want to call it, does is it, hopefully, because of the disciplines I put around it, it helps you make realistic milestones. It helps you think about, what do we want in 3 years' time, 2 years' time, chunk it back 1 year's time, and gives you credible chunks that we can do. Sometimes if we say in 3 years' time we're going to grow by 30% or 20%, it sounds scary. But when you look at the jump from this year to next year, it's not quite scary. It's doable. What else? I guess the questions that I've been asking around scaling, why can't we grow? If we want to grow 10 times as fast, questions like that, we can focus around the orbit diagram, and it really stimulates some interesting debates as to, oh, well, we'll never grow. What's he on about, growing this fast? We'll never grow because why? Why will he never grow as fast as we want? Well, because of this, because of that. Okay, well, let's build that into the plan. Let's, we're playing for real here. Let's put it in there. Destiny is sort of not a matter of chance, but of choice. It's not something to wish for, but it's something to attain. So let's get these sort of numbers in there and really shape our destiny. I guess the other thing I'd say is it encapsulates both the quantitative and qualitative, what the business will look and feel like. And then finally, it's absolutely a great piece of collateral to help sell your business to a potential employee, supplier, or even a potential investor. I know when I joined our organization many years ago, I was recruited on an orbit diagram. So the founder of our business, when he was telling me about why he wanted me to join, he got out his orbit diagram, no word of a lie, and said, this is where we're going to grow, Steve. We're going to be there in 3 years' time. We're going to be here. These are the regions of the UK we're going to be working in. And because you work in Wales and because of your knowledge, skills, and experience, that's the region. You can see in 3 years' time, we're going to be doing this amount in Wales. That's your role. That's why I want you to join. And it's going to be a really exciting journey. Come and join us. And it was. And, you know, it's a very positive leadership tool in that sort of sense. I guess finally, all this sounds great, and we know that plans are fantastic and visions are great, etc. But for those of you who attended last week's session on execution, you know, I said it's all very well having a vision, but a vision without execution is just a hallucination. And you'd be surprised at how, once you've got this vision down there and you've really challenged yourself and you've baked things in there and you've got something that looks actually a realistic growth story, because it talks about the numbers, it talks about the people, the operations, how sometimes there comes a moment where you realize that this could actually work. You are actually scoping out your destiny. And I love this quote from Plato. We can easily forgive a child that is afraid of the dark. The real tragedy of life is when men and women are afraid of the light. And the interesting side effect of having a 3-year vision on one page is whether you want to do it, whether it's a terrifying thought for you, or whether it's actually what you were born to do, your destiny. This is effectively a blueprint of success for you and your business. So what we need to do then is, yeah, sure, let's get this mapped out. I know some businesses that get it on a wall, they print it out in A0, big on the wall, keep it on the wall, drives everybody's behaviors, etc. But ultimately, make sure that we've got the team and the people in place to execute on it. And that was last week's execution workshop. But we've got to execute on it. Otherwise, it'll just forever be just a picture on the wall or a dream. So, as I say, you know, destiny is not a matter of chance, but of choice. It's not something to wish for, something for you and your business to attain. Okay, so what did we say we do? We said we're going to talk about why you need a vision. So hopefully we've done that. We talked about what is a vision? What is that orbit diagram look like? So hopefully you've had a chance not just to understand it, but also hopefully to apply it to your business. And, you know, we all only learn through doing. So hopefully you had the chance to take part in that exercise. And sure, I know, you know, I've done this lots of times. I know you'll be sat there going, well, it's a bit difficult this because I'm not really sure. Get something down for now. Let's get the draft down and then we can revisit it. And let's see if it makes sense. Where is it a bit low? Where is it a bit high? But let's create that. And let's create it so that, as I say, the size of your vision is bigger than the fear that you've got of doing it. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our presentation for today. I'll hand back to Lisa.
Thanks, Steve. Lots of information in there. If anybody does want to have the slides or the recording from it, just pop a note in the chat there so I can make a note to send those on to you once you've signed your AG3s, obviously. Steve is back with us, I believe, next Wednesday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Built to Exit webinar. So if anybody's been mesmerised by Steve today, come back on next week there.
That Built to Exit one is it's a really interesting one because it'll help you build a business with your vision, but it helped you build it in such a way so you're not working every hour God sends, which you probably are at the moment. And that's one of the biggest limitations on people's way of visioning, is that they just look at the vision and they go, well, I'm already working 18 hours a day and never seeing my family and haven't got a social life, etc., etc. I'm not going to do that. So they don't do the vision. So yeah, next week's really important, because how do you do that? How do you grow without keeping some quality of life for yourself?
Fabulous. If you're not booked onto that one, you can go to Eventbrite on there. Thanks, Kevin and Sean. I'll get those sent out to you, no problem there. Steve, as usual, I'm guessing if anybody comes up with, I know we're short on time now, because you do like to speak, don't you? He doesn't let anyone else get a word in edgeways. Trust me, I've worked in an office with him. He's just not happening there. Then you can just either come through us at the AGP team and we can forward it on to Steve, or my MD was not available. Sarah, do you want me to send all the bits out to you, or is that Robert, is it? No problem, I can send that out as well. Cool, I'll just give you a little bit of time to put on there whether you want to or not. Yeah, you can contact Steve either via the AGP team or straight to you if you've got questions that they would have liked to have asked, or think of anything that you should have asked but didn't, or that you want further help with anything, I guess. So you'll be there available, Steve, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Put you on the spot now anyway, you can't say like, you can give it back.
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
Thanks everyone, thanks Steve for giving up your time. Thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon. I'll get everything out to you as quickly as possible. The recordings do go off for editing, so it's usually about 1 or 2 days, but as soon as they're available, I'll get those out to you as well. And hopefully we'll see some of you next week as well. So thanks for joining. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have a good one.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye. Bye.